Nvidia's big Grok deal last week wasn't the first acquihire that the company did this year. It also did that with another startup called Enfabrica, and a few months before that, it bought chip software company CentML. Those were much smaller deals, but all of this reflection has prompted a question in my mind. What could Nvidia buy in 2026, or at least who might it look to for another acquihire? To help us brainstorm, I want to bring on Austin Lyons, a senior analyst at Creative Strategies. Austin, it's great to see you. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, Kash, thanks for having me.
I didn't wish Theo Happy New Year properly in the last segment, so I'm going to start by saying Happy New Year to you.
Well, thank you, sir.
Okay, so let's brainstorm here. What do you think that NVIDIA could buy next year?
So that's a great question. And I think if you look at NVIDIA, and if we just speculate here, they have a history of buying technology companies for their talent and for their intellectual property. Obviously, going all the way back to the Mellanox days, which gave them scale out networking and scale up networking. So if you ask, thinking about networking, if you say, where is networking going next? We've already seen in 2025, NVIDIA mentioned that they are going to build co-packaged optics switches for scale out networking, which scale out networking already communicates using photons over optical signals over fibers.
Bring it down one level for us. So
Yes.
if we were explaining it to somebody who wasn't in tech.
Yeah, totally. So when GPUs have to talk over long distances, it's better to use light instead of electrons. There's fundamental reasons why that's more efficient. When GPUs are really close together and they talk to each other, historically, they've talked using electricity over copper traces. But now, as the industry starts to push more and more data around at faster and faster speeds for training and for inference, there actually will be some physical limits to communicating over using electricity, essentially.
And how the chips talk to each other, basically.
Exactly. And so for scale up, this is scale up when these GPUs are really close, but they still talk to each other. There's actually technical reasons why the industry is starting to look to using optics for scale up. So for example, Marvell just bought a company, Celestial AI, and they make something called a photonic fabric. And so this is just letting chips, even if they're really close together, talk to each other using light. It would not be surprising to see NVIDIA make an acquisition here. A company that comes to mind is Ayar Labs, which is a company actually that NVIDIA has invested in already. So they're intimately familiar with them. Ayar Labs makes optical I/O chiplets and these optical interconnects. So that is, I know it's very sort of meaty and technical, but that would definitely be an acquisition. I wouldn't be surprised if it's on the table in 2026.
Well, look, this idea of photonics is an area that we've talked about on the show. Vinod Khosla pointed to it as one of the most promising areas that he was looking. And so I think the fact that NVIDIA is looking to, or that NVIDIA might look to expand its operations there certainly makes sense to me. Outside of that, are there other names that you're looking at in this space?
So in this space, there are other players. For example, Lightmatter is a company that does essentially very similar things, and they're actually focused on 3D photonics. So what if you could actually stack the optical engine and the GPU, and they could actually communicate vertically? So a little bit more interesting, maybe a little bit further out. Kind of that would be an architectural bet that they're making. But I would say Ayar Labs is one that definitely comes to mind for a lot of people tracking this space.
So let me ask you about the business of the cloud. We had some reporting earlier this month that NVIDIA has basically put aside its ambitions to compete with AWS as far as building out a cloud business. And we also reported that they had basically reassigned some of the executives that were overseeing this work. You know, I kind of thought that this would have been a logical step for NVIDIA, especially as it looks to vertically integrate itself, maybe not upstream with the chip production, but downstream insofar as what you do with the chips, stuff like that. I kind of thought maybe a cloud acquisition would have made sense. Do you think anything like that could be in the cards for 2026 or 27?
So that's a good, interesting question. This is very strategically interesting. Should NVIDIA go beyond silicon and actually run a cloud business? Early on, they dipped their toes into this, and a lot of analysts and industry followers were a little surprised because it felt like the danger there is that Nvidia would be competing with their biggest customers, Microsoft, even Google buys GPUs and rents them out, right? And so there was a question of, oh, is Nvidia going to make their customers mad if they start a competing cloud business? Now, if you fast forward a little bit and ask, well, what would need to come true for Nvidia to get back into that game? If it's really about a business model and capturing margin, and in the value chain right now, it's like a picks and shovels play. The people that make the hardware are capturing all the margins. In the future, if you believe in a world where those margins compress because of competitive pressures, whether it's from other GPU vendors like AMD or from hyperscalers making their own XPUs, so Amazon, maybe they don't need to buy as many GPUs in the future because they're building their own Trainium. There could be a world where the margin capture actually shifts higher in the stack to the application layer or to the inferences and API layer. And if NVIDIA felt that their margins were being compressed and they still had lots of cash, I could see them considering getting back in the game and asking, could we make money here? And it wouldn't be on like bare metal GPU rentals. It would probably be on the like inference as a service type play.
Right, but the point you're making is that the economics of making the chip and selling the chip, and the software around the chip, I mean, that would have to compress considerably for NVIDIA to look downstream, in terms of what they might seek to offer.
Totally. And, we don't necessarily see a sign of that. NVIDIA has wonderful margins in the 70%. But this could be a longer term thing. So 2026, not so sure, but could it happen in the future? Possibly.
Right. Although I will say, look, and this is now a different point than the cloud point, but in software is so key to these chips. Some sort of acquisition to sort of keep that software moat strong. I mean, that could be another area that they look to, because we've talked about this on the show. It's they're trying to sell people the full system, end to end with their chips, and so. Definitely interesting to think about. Austin, I want to thank you for coming on, and Happy New Year to you. That is Austin Lyons, Senior Analyst at Creative Strategies here on TI TV.